The morning was still cool when I came back from my walk. I'd taken the long route past the big sycamore tree near the post office, the one with roots like knotted knuckles. My knees ached, but in a familiar way, the kind that says you're still alive. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the quiet. Except it wasn't quiet. There was rustling upstairs, boxes maybe. Tape being pulled, something heavy shifting. I paused at the bottom of the stairs, adjusted the grip on my water bottle, and listened. Delia's voice came before I reached the landing. "Oh, Mom, perfect timing," she said as I entered the room. My room. She was folding clean sheets, fresh from the dryer. They were mine. Cream-colored cotton I'd had since the year her twins were born. Now she smoothed them across the foot of my bed like she was dressing something for presentation. "You'll be moving to the laundry room," she said, not looking up. "Milo's parents need this space." I stood still. The laundry room. Milo appeared in the doorway behind her, arms crossed, but saying nothing. He gave me a quick nod, eyes low. Delia turned, finally. We figured it made the most sense. They're getting older, and they're only here a few months, just until they get settled. I glanced around the room, the dresser, the chair where I used to read, the lamp with the crack she broke when she was 6. I looked back at Delia, but she was already fluffing a pillow. "You okay with that?" she asked, her tone brisk. "We really want to make them feel welcome." I nodded. Not because I agreed, not because I wanted to, but because the fight had been drained from me in 5 short sentences. "Thanks, Mom," she said, beaming, like it had been my idea. I walked out without another word and went to put the kettle on. But I didn't make tea. I poured a fresh cup of coffee and sat at the table alone, already knowing this wasn't going to stop with a room. I wasn't always this quiet. There was a time my voice filled delivery rooms, sharp and sure. I helped bring over 300 babies into the world, held their heads, coached, breathless. Mothers caught life with gloved hands. My hands were steady, then decisive, stronger than I looked. Everyone used to say so. After Harold died, I raised Delia by myself. No nanny, no shortcuts, just night shifts and early mornings. I made her lunches. I bought her prom dress. I taught her how to drive in the church parking lot. I gave her everything I had: time, strength, patience. And when she said she needed to come home for just 6 months with the babies, I didn't hesitate. I gave up the study for their cribs, gave up the second bathroom for their bath toys, gave up sleep for their colic. I gave up quiet for chaos, and never once asked when she'd leave. She said it with a smile. "Just until we get on our feet." That was 3 years ago. I didn't expect to be thanked, but I didn't expect to be erased either. Now I sit in a corner of my own kitchen, while Delia runs the household like she owns it. Milo grunts. Hello eats the meals I cook, and then disappears into calls. The twins call me Nana, but only when they need something. Otherwise, I'm the background hum, the woman who folds their clothes, fixes snacks, wipes the counters. I don't say much anymore. Not because I have nothing to say, but because no one listens when I do. I've become furniture, convenient, silent. When Delia told me to move into the laundry room, she didn't ask. She told. And the worst part? She didn't even notice what that meant. I looked around the laundry space that evening. Bare bulb, thin cot, one small window facing a fence. There was no closet, no room for my dresser. My books were still upstairs. My photos too. I hadn't just lost my room. I'd lost proof I lived here. The next morning, I found Nadine sitting at my kitchen table like she owned the place. They arrived with 3 suitcases, 2 neck pillows, and a casserole dish wrapped in foil, like it was a peace offering. Walter, tall and slow-moving, smiled like a man who expected to be served. Nadine wore pale lipstick and a sweater tied over her shoulders, delicate, proper, and already judging the paint color in the hallway. "Such a charming home," she said, walking past me at the door. "So cozy." Delia gave them the tour kitchen, playroom, guest room, and I stayed quiet, watching from the hallway, as Nadine wrinkled her nose at the throw pillows and ran her fingers along the windowsill like she was testing for dust. The first day, they were polite. Reserved, even. The second day, the comments started. "Does the coffee always taste this bitter?" Walter asked as I poured him a second cup. "Perhaps a lower temperature on the thermostat," Nadine added. "I run warm." By the end of the week, they'd rearranged the fridge, unplugged my slow cooker, and left a post-it on the dishwasher suggesting a more efficient routine. I mentioned it to Delia lightly, carefully. She sighed. "Mom, don't take everything so personally. They're just particular." Particular became the reason Nadine needed new bedding, the reason Walter insisted on a different detergent, the reason the guest room. My old sewing room suddenly wasn't ergonomic enough. Then came the sighs, the whispers between Delia and Nadine, and finally, one morning, I heard it said aloud. "It's not that we want to be a burden," Nadine said, hand on her lower back. "But my spine really does need a firmer mattress." Delia nodded slowly, like it had only just occurred to her, and looked straight past the guest room door. Right at mine. She didn't say anything in that moment. She didn't have to. That look was already a plan in motion. Later that night, I found her standing at the hallway closet, taking measurements. I closed the door behind me and stood in the silence, letting it stretch around me like a shawl. The light through the curtains was warm, a little golden. It hit the dresser first, the tall one, with the carved trim herald stained by hand, back when we thought having matching furniture mattered. I stepped closer and let my fingers glide across the surface. The wood was still smooth. The polish had faded, but it held on just like me. This room had witnessed everything. It was where I kissed Harold goodbye the last time, and where I clutched his hand through those final shallow breaths. It was where Delia, age 7, curled up next to me with chickenpox, her forehead hot against my arm, while I hummed, "You Are My Sunshine" on loop. She used to call this room the soft room. It was also where I collapsed after the Board of Nursing suspended me, wrongfully accused of negligence after a delivery went sideways. They cleared me months later, but no one gave me those nights back. I cried into these sheets until they were stiff with salt. Every inch of this room held me. Now Delia called it just space. She'd said it like a solution. "Mom, it's just temporary. They're older, they need the comfort. But that's the thing. This room wasn't just 4 walls and a mattress. It was 30 years of my life. The only space that still felt like mine in a house that was becoming less recognizable by the day. I sat down at the edge of the bed. The springs groaned like an old friend trying to get up. My photo albums were on the shelf by the window. The robe Harold gave me for our 20th anniversary still hung on the hook. Delia didn't see any of that. She saw square footage, convenience, a mattress that could solve someone else's problem. I leaned back against the headboard, staring at the ceiling I'd once painted sky blue. And that was when I heard it whispers through the baby monitor I'd forgotten was still plugged in. I was dusting the top shelf in the twins' nursery, balancing on the little footstool they always insisted was only for big people, when I heard it. Voices soft but close. The baby monitor crackled to life beside the crib. "She'll move out soon," Delia was saying, her tone casual. "We basically own the house now." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. "Oh, you two are saints for taking her in," Nadine said. "At her age? That can't be easy." Then came the worst sound of all laughter. Low, comfortable, shared. Milo's voice joined in. "She's used to being here. We just need to make the transition smooth." I stared at the monitor like it had teeth. The green light flickered steadily. No one realized it was still on. No one thought I was listening. No one thought I could be listening. But I was. "She doesn't need much," Delia added. Just a little space. The laundry room's fine for now. She, not mom, not mama. Just she. I stepped down from the stool, slowly, knees-tight cloth still in my hand. I set it on the changing table, then pressed the monitor's power button. The light blinked off, and the room fell silent again. But inside me, something had already started to hum. It wasn't sadness. Not this time. It was something colder, something firmer. They didn't see me anymore. Not as a person, not as family. I had become part of the background, the one who made sandwiches, wiped counters, changed sheets, and stayed out of the way. Basically, owned the house, she'd said. They didn't. But I did. That night I lay awake in my bed, still my bed for what I decided would be the last time. At sunrise, I pulled up the loose floorboard beneath the rug. The board creaked, just like I remembered it would. For years, that hollow space had been my quiet insurance, a habit born from a time when keeping things safe meant keeping them out of sight. Beneath the rug, beneath the floor, beneath everyone's assumptions about me was the truth they'd all forgotten. I lifted the plank and reached into the dark. The folder was still there, wrapped in plastic. Edges curled from time but untouched. I carried it to the bed and sat cross-legged the way I used to when sorting bills late at night. My fingers didn't shake. I opened the folder and stared at the page I'd signed over. 30 years ago, Marvella T. Greer, sole owner of 118 Maple Bend Drive. No shared name, no joint title, no lien, no debt. Just mine. I ran a hand across the line where my signature looped, remembering the feel of that pen, the notary's stamp Harold standing beside me, proud and smiling. They didn't know. Delia didn't know. Milo didn't know. His parents definitely didn't know. That morning, before anyone else stirred, I stood on the porch in my robe and called a number I hadn't used since Harold passed. Greystone Realty. This is Camille. Camille, it's Marvella Greer. I'd like to list a property. There was a pause. Of course, Marvella. You're selling yes and buying no. How fast are we talking? I looked out at the street at the cracked sidewalk Delia always said she'd fix. The toy tricycle left tipped in the yard. The birdbath Nadine had declared cluttered. Fast, I said. Quiet and clean. This neighborhood moves quick, Camille said, voice picking up with interest. So do I replied already, walking inside. By noon, she had photos scheduled. By the next day, we had buyers. I didn't tell anyone, not yet. But I started making a list what to pack, what to leave, and what to take with me when I disappeared from the background of their lives. And that night, I moved my coffee mug to a new shelf out of reach. They left around 10, Delia calling out something about towels and storage bins. Nadine trailed after her with a list in hand. Milo offered a distracted wave already halfway to the car. The twins were strapped into car seats, whining about snacks. No one looked back at me. I waited until the driveway emptied. Then I moved. Not like someone preparing for a trip. Not like someone changing rooms. Like someone leaving. I took only what mattered: 2 suitcases. One held clothes, comfortable, durable, chosen with care. The other held pieces of my life. My wedding band, the folded flag from Harold's service, and the photo album, with Delia's tiny hand pressed into finger paint on the first page. I didn't cry. I didn't even pause. From the closet shelf, I took down the letter Harold wrote on our 25th anniversary. From the drawer, the small pouch of cash I'd always kept tucked behind the old tax forms just in case. I brewed one last pot of coffee and poured it into the mug with the tiny chip on the handle. The one Delia said was ugly, but Harold had bought it on our honeymoon. I sat at the kitchen island, the house warm with silence, and sipped slowly. Outside, a breeze pushed leaves across the porch. Inside, I waited. At 2:17 p.m., the doorbell rang. The new owners arrived exactly as promised. A young couple, fresh-faced and nervous, followed by a moving truck that pulled into the driveway like a punctuation mark. They smiled and extended hands. I handed them the keys. No one else knows yet, I said. But they will. Soon. Delia walked in 10 minutes later, shopping bags in one hand, keys in the other. She froze. Her eyes went from me sitting calmly at the kitchen island to the couple walking through the living room to the large white truck in the driveway with boxes marked Greer. "What's going on?" she asked, breath short. I set down my coffee. "This house isn't yours," I said gently. "And starting today, it's not mine either." Delia's voice cracked before her words did. "You can't do this, Mom." She dropped the shopping bags at her feet, eyes wide, scanning the living room like someone waking up mid-fire. Milo stepped in behind her, took one look at the couple signing papers at the counter, and blanched. "Is this a joke?" he asked, voice thin. Nadine was the last to appear, trailing from the hallway, with one of my folded quilts in her hands. Her mouth opened when she saw the boxes by the front door, then closed again, as tears pooled without warning. I don't understand," she whispered. I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope. "This explains everything," I said, and placed it in Delia's trembling hands. She tore it open. Her eyes moved fast, then slower, then stopped. "You sold the house," she said. "You actually sold it." I did. "To strangers. Without telling anyone." "No," I said, meeting her stare. "I just didn't tell you." Milo stepped forward. "Where are we supposed to go?" I tilted my head. "The same place you expected me to go. The laundry room. The street anywhere that didn't get in the way." "You're throwing your family into the street," Delia shouted. I looked at her, not coldly, not even angrily, just fully. "You did that the moment you handed my bedroom to strangers." Nadine let out a sound like a broken kettle. "We didn't mean to." "But you did," I said. No one moved. No one breathed. The young couple hovered by the kitchen, unsure if they should speak. I turned to them and smiled. "Everything's ready." I left the receipts for utilities and the mailbox key on the table. Delia gripped the envelope like it could still be undone. "How could you do this to us?" I didn't answer her question. Because it wasn't the right one. Instead, I turned, picked up my coat from the hook, and walked out the door. The wind had changed. The sun was sharp. And I still had one more stop to make. The sliding doors opened without a creak. That was the first gift. Outside, the water stretched like quiet breath. Not ocean, just the wide curve of the lake below, but it shimmered like something sacred. The sunrise cast long streaks of gold across the surface, and for the first time in years, I didn't need to be anywhere but here. I padded into the small kitchen and brewed a pot of coffee. No interruptions. No one asking if I'd made extra or if I could hurry so the microwave wasn't tied up. Just the hiss and hum of hot water and beans and the smell that wrapped around me like a hug. The condo was small. 2 bedrooms, no stairs-wide windows. Everything clean, intentional, quiet. I'd brought only what I loved. The photo of Harold on our first trip to Yosemite sat on the mantel. My books lined one short shelf. The robe still hung in the closet, untouched but present. I carried my coffee to the porch and sat. A book in my lap. No footsteps overhead. No whispers through baby monitors. No one asking where the laundry detergent was kept. I read 2 chapters without looking at my phone. When it finally buzzed, I didn't flinch. It was Delia. Again, I didn't answer. But I let the voicemail play through. Her voice cracked around the second sentence. Apologies stacked on explanations. She said Milo was trying to call too. That Nadine and Walter had found a place temporarily. That the twins missed me. That maybe they could talk this out. I listened. Then I deleted it. Not out of spite. Not even anger. Just choice. For the first time in years, I had no questions to answer. No explanations to give. The home was mine. The peace was mine. The quiet was mine. I finished my coffee and watched the sun climb higher, unbothered by whether anyone else knew where I was. Later, I'd unpack the last box. But first, I opened my journal, picked up my pen, and wrote one word on the page. Enough. 6 months passed, the way quiet seasons do, without ceremony, but full of change. I filled my days with simple things. Walks by the lake, visits to the bookstore, a community garden where no one knew my history, only my name. I cooked dinner for one, brewed coffee for myself, and slept in a bed that was never negotiated away. Then one morning, a letter arrived. Delia's handwriting on the envelope. It wasn't angry or pleading, just worn down, like the ink had softened from too much holding. Inside, she wrote that the twins missed me, that Milo was working longer hours, that they'd found a new house, smaller but quiet. She said she'd been thinking a lot about what happened, about the room, about the words that were said and not said. She didn't ask to move in. She asked to meet. I read the letter once, then again, then folded it neatly and set it beside my coffee spoon, the one Harold had always insisted made the perfect swirl. That afternoon I wrote back. No lecture, no guilt. Just this, Delia. I hope your new home brings you peace. I've found mine. I signed it and tucked it into an envelope. No return address. Some bridges don't need to burn, but they don't need to be rebuilt either. That night, I left the bedroom light off. No hallway whispers. No footsteps pausing outside my door. No one calling my name to ask for space that was never theirs to begin with. I pulled the quilt up to my chest and let the dark settle in around me. And when I closed my eyes, I slept easy. Not because the world had made peace with me, but because I had made peace with myself. There is no room worth more than that.